Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 4 of Marching Forward with Flow. I am your host for this event, Andrea Pratt-Smith, and I am so glad to have as my special guest today none other than the amazing and innovative Mr. Jim Spark. So, Jim, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing well as well. But today I wanted to just start our conversation by asking you a question that has been on my mind lately. Like, I'm trying to recall, when did we first meet? When did you and I meet? Like, what was the first time we had an interaction? Because I can't really recall. Can you?
It was in a class that we took together, and oh my goodness, it could have been. No, I don't think it was the APK. It may have been the ASPK. Honestly, I don't remember. It was a prokanban.org class. I remember that because I remember uh, you were a trainer. You may have been going through a train the trainer, and you were a trainer at the time when I was going to go do my peer review in that process. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, there's a familiar face, someone I know. So I requested for you to be one of the folks that sit in on my peer review, and which, if you remember, I kind of, choked on, which was funny because you even asked, well, you thought that you asked for us and you thought that you would be more comfortable with people you knew, and you were still a little nervous and kind of got lost. So that sticks out in my head, but I'm pretty sure it was a class that we took together.
Yeah, I think so too. But I do recall your peer review, and in my defense, I really supported you passing that peer review. I was one who was really advocating for you, and I said, to the other peer reviewers, I said, when you come into this type of session, even though you may have been familiar with the persons who were reviewing you, it's still a nerve-wracking experience. And even though we know you know the content, it's when you get to that place where you have to deliver it in a fake classroom setting, but a classroom setting nonetheless. You do have those situations where you just choke, but it's not because you don't know the content, it's because it's a terrifying experience. So I knew, that was one of the reasons why you may not have excelled the way you wanted to, but you do know the content and you know it very well, and I've watched you grow as a trainer. So can you share a bit about your journey into becoming a professional Kanban trainer? Like, what inspired you to specialize in Kanban?
Yeah, I'd love to. No, first, I appreciate that. Hopefully, I know what I'm doing. It'd be nice to have other folks feel that same way. So that's good to hear that from you. I think what started it, I remember seeing Pro Kanban several years ago. I was a Scrum Master, have been for about 7 years. And I remember seeing Pro Kanban. And I was like, just I kind of dismissed it at the time. And then I was supporting a team that they wanted to do Kanban. And now, looking back, I'm like, yeah, all they did was use a Kanban board. They weren't really Kanban. But, I think what it was is I was interested in Kanban to learn something new, to get another look at things and another way of doing things and helping my teams be successful. And then I reached out to John Coleman at one point and talked to him about some things that I was wanting to do with my career and whatnot, just to kind of, poke his brain a little bit. And he said that one of the things you're going to want to do is, become a trainer of some sort to build credibility, to help others, really believe and understand that you know what you're talking about. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to have something in your back pocket to show credibility to, different levels of organizations. But he had mentioned go be a trainer somewhere, potentially like a PKT with Pro Kanban or something like that. And I'm like, okay. So that's when I started looking into it, and I mean that was the moment I decided that I was going to go full on, with Pro Kanban. I was going to learn as much as I could. I started to take some of the classes, and then decided to be a trainer, and that's kind of what got me there.
Okay, well, that's a good journey to have, especially when you said around building your credibility on the subject matter. So, for those new to the concept, could you explain what Kanban is and how it differs from other agile methodologies, or is it a agile methodology?
I love that you asked that question, the way you asked that question, because that is, I'm actually putting together something. I want to do a conference talk of some sort about that. I don't believe that Kanban is an agile, framework or methodology. Kanban technically is just a strategy that you can use to help your work flow through your system more effectively and more efficiently. It's some principles you can put in place where you can visualize your work, so you see what you've got going on, you see where everything's at. You manage that work through your system. You could potentially limit your work in progress. I like to call it optimize your work in progress instead, but you can make sure that everything's going through your system that way, and then just continuously improve using your data, using your metrics, using those to look at improvement opportunities and way you can continually seek to improve your system is really what Kanban is about. It doesn't even have to be an agile system or way of working. It could work for a lot of different environments, a lot of different industries. It doesn't even have to be an agile thing. So I disagree that it's a Kanban or a agile framework, although most people put it there. So I'm kind of doing some research into that now so I can support my hypothesis that it really is not an agile framework.
Yes, and I wholeheartedly agree with you because I find the same thing when I teach Kanban. Persons they have to unlearn to learn. And I think that's
Yes.
important to emphasize when you come into the classroom environment. They have, some students who are already familiar with agile methodologies and the different frameworks. They come with their perceived knowledge of what Kanban is and how it should be used. And then when we teach the class, a light bulb moment happens and they say, "Oh, I didn't know it worked this way." Like it's so different from what I thought it was and how it can be used and how it is used. And it's kind of good to see them have that kind of reaction. So what are some of the most common challenges organizations face when implementing Kanban in your opinion?
Well, and I'm actually experiencing this now. One of the first things you need to break down is the mindset, because a lot of people don't really understand what Kanban is. They just think, oh, we've got a Kanban board. We're doing Kanban. And so you have to break down that mindset, as you say, unlearn what you've learned to get them to see the full power of implementing a Kanban system and using it as best you can versus just having a to-do board, so to speak. So that's one of the biggest ones. And then another one is we're going to do Kanban, but in the background, we're still going to maintain a lot of our old policies and our old ways of doing things. Whereas instead of breaking down work as small as possible, they potentially hide their whip in a larger, item. They will push back on breaking things down, small batch sizes, stuff like that. Just to really, embracing the full effect of Kanban is a huge obstacle for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So, can you discuss some of the essential tools or techniques in Kanban practice? And how do these tools help teams enhance productivity or transparency?
Yeah, you don't have to have a specific tool. A lot of people they get hung up on whatever tool of record they're using with their organization, whether it be Jira or Azure DevOps or whatever it is. You could be effective with Kanban on just an old school whiteboard and cards, index cards across your board that way. But I think it is the mindset of getting people to realize, how do we break things down, really focusing on breaking the batch size up as small as possible, getting to things that make sense, still deliver value, but break them down as small as you can. That's going to help them move forward through the system as quickly as possible. So that's a big thing. I like whiteboards personally. I use Miro a lot. I think that's a great tool to use. I think the mindset of people getting into a refinement is another one. Well, we can only break work down when we're in refinement. You need to expand that mindset and realize, well, you you can talk about your work and you can break down your work even after you've started. And a lot of people were like, well, I've started this item, I can't break it down. And I think a lot of that stems from, some of the Scrum stuff you find in the world where they think, oh, we can't change an item after we start it and pull it into a sprint. So that kind of bleeds throughout the entire industry. And people just think, well, we can't break it down. So I try to get people to realize that you can break work down whenever you want. It's one of the things I try to teach them in the industry or in the organizations with the teams. So
Yeah, that's one important thing to remember, that right sizing can happen at any time, and really that's how you deal with the blockers. Like if something is taking too long to get through your workflow or the pipeline, then one of the questions you ask is, maybe this is too big. Maybe we need to revisit the size of this work item and think about breaking it down into smaller but valuable pieces of work. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So my next question would be, what transformations have you observed in teams or organizations after they've adopted Kanban? Do you have any success stories that you can share?
I do. And we didn't officially adopt Kanban with this team, but I was supporting two Scrum teams in a Agile transformation. And I started to slowly bring in, some of the thoughts and principles of Kanban. The first time I brought a cycle time scatter plot into a retrospective, it was probably the most effective retrospective we had had in months. And we started looking at some of the outliers, and the team just started running with it. They were asking questions. Well, why is this one up here? Why is this one taking so long? And why did these three close, way longer than all these ones down here at the bottom? And we started to dig into the data a little bit. Data doesn't lie. So we were digging into that, and we identified that some of them were, bugs. We weren't exactly handling, defects and bugs correctly. So that those teams actually developed a whole new process to handle, or how they handle defects and how they handle bugs in their system better, going out of that retrospective. And that was just from the first time I brought in the cycle time scatter plot. So that to me was a huge win. It was a big time win for the teams. And we actually ended up taking that across multiple teams, kind of a standardized process, not just with these two. So the whole portfolio adopted that way. And it was very cool. It was fun to see. And especially the biggest win for me was that the team themselves were running with it. It wasn't just me running with it and saying this and saying that. It was, once I threw that scatter plot out there, it was like, boom, they ran with it. So that was very cool.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting, and I'm sure that they will never forget that experience of learning why is this the way it is and how can we improve our system. So, what does the pathway look like for someone who may be interested in becoming a professional Kanban trainer?
Oh, very cool. That's a great question. I love telling that story. Basically, I would say start with, working with Kanban. Work with it at home. You can do Kanban at home, and to really learn a little bit about how it works. If you're So that way you understand it, and you really, that this is what I love to do. I love everything about it. I want to teach it. I want to train it. I want to be involved in that. And once you've done that and really ignited that spark within yourself for how it works and the power of Kanban, I would recommend finding a class. Go to one of Pro Kanban's classes. Uh, the Applying Professional Kanban course is a great place to start, but you can really take any of them, especially if you're a little farther along on your Kanban journey. If you've been, immersed in it for a few years at work or whatever, you could, pick up some of the other ones, but definitely start there. And once you've done that, take it back to work. Go to work with it. Start to apply it so that you can then tell stories about, the learning you've done and, the experiences you've had. See how it implements, see how it works at work, and then you can go and apply with prokanban.org. You can get on their website and follow the application process to become a professional Kanban trainer, and then just jump through that. You'll get into your peer reviews, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, and I can give you some. Don't get as nervous as I did. They don't bite. It's not as overwhelming as it seems to be. So
Yes, and I think a good key point is to keep your peer review simple. Keep it simple. Don't overthink it. Like, I know, Jim, when you probably prepared for yours, you wanted to cover so much content
Hmm.
in a short period of time, and it causes you to get flustered. So keep your content simple and focus on just delivering one small portion of the content very well, and you will pass the peer review. I guarantee it. So, Jim, where do you see the future of Kanban and agile practices going in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think there's some emerging trends that we should be aware of?
From what I can tell, or at least in my opinion on all this, based on just kind of being involved and immersed in the industry a little bit, we seem to be getting away from like structured frameworks. I think that a lot of people seem, a little jaded by the rules and principles of some of the frameworks, and now it's becoming more product focused. It's just about delivering the product, and if you use Kanban, to be effective in delivering your product, great. If you use a combination of Kanban and Scrum and XP or whatever works, I think is the way we're going. I think we're getting away from the dedicated frameworks that are out there, and I honestly think that we're going to be better for it. I think using getting away from the being locked into the agile mindset. Great, don't get me wrong, powerful and amazing, and when used properly, you can be super duper successful with it. But I think a lot of people nowadays are starting to get away from the origins of it and what it was really established to do. So there's a lot of bad agile out there. So I think as we shift away from that and we start to just focus on more of an agnostic process, it's going to be focusing on the delivery, focusing on product, and focusing on the customer, and not even worrying about what framework you're using.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. We in Kanban we prioritize value, like the delivery of
Mhm.
value. That's the most important thing, and making sure that our customers are happy and satisfied with what it is that we're delivering. So,
And that's why I love Kanban so much. Is it's as I've said earlier on. I don't believe it's a framework. I think it's just a strategy and a way of working that focuses on simplicity. It focuses on delivery. It focuses on the flow and getting your products through and out to the customers. It focuses on getting feedback as quickly as possible. It focuses on continuous improvement. It focuses on telling a good story by using empirical data. I mean, all of those things are agnostic to any framework. You can use those anywhere, and that's why I love Kanban so much. Is that is what it's based on.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you. But one thing I'm finding very interesting is remote collaboration. So, with many teams working remotely, what strategies do you recommend for maintaining effective collaboration and communication in a virtual Kanban environment?
Um, we're still the teams I'm supporting right now. They still meet once a day, once every other day to communicate. We do it via Teams. Some of them are co-located. Not all of them are. So we definitely use some type of digital or virtual communication tool to meet up. We use a digital tool so that everyone can access it and see the board so we can visualize our work. I think that's important. You want to maintain that visualization, even if you don't want to break it down into a Jira type of tracking tool. Use some virtual whiteboard out there so you can see the work, and then maintain constant communication. Some form of chat is definitely important so that you can communicate each day, because not everyone will meet every day, but you have to have those lines of communication open. I believe is very, very important as we move forward.
Yeah, so that's one important factor to keep the lines of communications open. But another thing
Mhm.
is conflict resolution. So we all know that conflicts can arise when you're collaborating. So how does Kanban help in managing or resolving conflicts within teams?
I think you can use that because it, again, I keep going back to visualizing the work. A lot of conflicts arise around priorities. Well, we have to do this first. No, we have to do this first. Or it revolves around who's going to do what today. Or it revolves around he said, she said, I did that work. Well, you did that work. And potentially conflicts arise around dependencies between teams, not even in a team, but across teams. And a lot of times that can create conflicts for the work. And when you visualize it, it kind of takes that out of it. It's like the old thing that data doesn't lie. Well, if you've got it on the board and it's visualized right there, it's right in front of you. There's really no arguing the data that is in front of you. So it helps with that. I think it also, because it does promote transparency and it does promote smaller batch sizes and continuous improvement, that encourages folks to get together and talk about the work and talk about the system and talk about the process more frequently. Whether you have a scheduled retrospective on a certain cadence or not, you still are encouraged. The system itself just encourages the team to seek continuous improvement and get together and talk about that. And as humans, when we are, in a conflict or we are having issues with someone else, communication is the best way to resolve that. So I think that the fact that Kanban, really promotes that or encourages that is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I'm agreeing with you a lot today. But some advice
You're
for
so agreeable.
practitioners. Yeah. Yeah, we're on the same page in the same book. But advice for practitioners, what advice would you give to professionals who are looking to deepen their understanding of Kanban or to begin applying it in their work environment? What advice would you give practitioners?
Start where you are. Start small. No matter what you're working on or what framework you are using, if you're using a framework, there's some things you can do where you don't really need permission. You don't need to ask permission to do some things, such as you can start tracking your flow metrics. Kanban, we have to track there's four metrics we track, work item age, cycle time, throughput, work in progress. And you can track those without asking permission. You don't have to have anything special set up in the tool to do so. That's something really easy to get started with. And then you can start to learn how to use those metrics and use that data to tell stories. And you can then take those stories that will then help you identify ways for continuous improvement. Once you started to visualize your work, use your data that's out there to seek continuous improvement. Before you know it, without really saying it or officially saying, we're going to do a transformation, we're going to switch to Kanban, you're doing things that are in Kanban, and you realize that you're doing them pretty well. And then you can start to have that conversation of, do we transition now? Do we change, from a Scrum team or from an XP team or whatever to, an official Kanban team?
Yeah, and I love the way how you mentioned the fact that you mentioned continuous improvement. And I'm wondering, how does Kanban promote a culture of continuous improvement? Do you have any practical examples of continuous improvement initiatives that you've either seen or facilitated?
Yes. Besides the one a little bit earlier about the whole new bug, how they handle bugs and defects process, uh, we talk about our work item age pretty much every day. Just trying to identify the oldest items, which would then be our most important items to work on that day for the most part. And one team I'm working with, some of the items were starting to grab some age. They were starting to get a little bit older. So we're trying to figure out why were those items, getting old? Why was our, work in progress going up a little bit? And we noticed that we got a lot of disruptive type of work where they would get a message on the side for them to go do this or go do that. And they might get an email asking them, hey, can you do this? Or can you do that? Circumventing the standard process. Someone would submit a ticket, it goes through, the request and whatnot. So by identifying watching our work item age and identifying that it was, going up, and in the process of always seeking continuous improvement, having those discussions of why is work item age getting old? Why is our WIP going up a little bit? We were able to identify the disruptive work that was coming through and implement a process for tracking and disruptive work, and being able to use that as a coaching opportunity for those that were external to the team, but they were continually asking questions of the team and putting requests into the team through the non-standard process. So we're in the middle of coaching others, coaching external to our team now because of the continuous improvement efforts within the team.
That's amazing, Jim. And I have a good question to ask about burnout. Right? We both know that Kanban can reveal capacity issues that lead to overburdening. But how do you recommend teams manage their workload efficiently to avoid burnout?
That can be different or difficult based on the makeup of the team. If that is very siloed within it, you have 5 members and they all 5 have specific things that they do. It's a little bit more difficult to manage that. My normal answer, my default answer would be, as long as you have a team where people can work with each other and they can do 2, 3, 4 different things. You identify, you watch your work in progress. When it starts to go up a little bit, or if you are using WIP limits and you're in danger of breaking those, you identify ways where you can collaborate. You can do some peer development, and to really get things going, which will then reduce the amount of work in progress, which takes some of that stress off of the team members. It lets them breathe a little bit and realize that, okay, we can actually get this done instead of always having 47 different things that they're stressed out about. Right now, working with a couple of, or at least one very siloed team, and having folks that are a little overwhelmed and have a little bit much on their plate right now, it's looking for opportunities where we can potentially have one person who wants to learn the work that this other person does, step in and help out. It's looking for opportunities where other people have some bandwidth that can help and learn in the process. It's also about using the data, using the metrics we have to show a good story and actually level set expectations. Using that data to talk to the stakeholders that are asking for things, wanting features done, wanting things to be moved into the backlog, and use that data to let them know that we have one human being. This human being has this much, bandwidth. The requests you're making of us are putting us way behind, and you're increasing that stress load where they feel now they want to work 12 hours a day just to get everything done.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's managing expectations, and especially external to the team.
Yes, I agree with you again. So I know that Kanban, there has been a lot of myths. What are some common misconceptions about Kanban that you encounter, and how do you address them?
Well, first one is, if we have a board, we're doing Kanban.
Yeah.
So people feel that, and I get that a lot. That is not true. You can have a Kanban board, so to speak. I wish you could see me doing the little quote sign, but you can have a Kanban board and still not be doing Kanban. If you're just using that as a to-do list to move things across there, that is not Kanban. A lot of times people will think you can't do Scrum and Kanban. They're like, it's got to be Scrum or it's got to be Kanban. And that is so far from the truth. You can blend Scrum and Kanban together so well. I mean, it's almost magical, the impact you can have on your Scrum teams by blending in some Kanban, and specifically around like flow metrics. Using your flow metrics to really make an effective and powerful forecast, for your sprint planning, that's based on real data and not just subjectively guessing at how much you can do. And as I said earlier, pulling a cycle time scatter plot into your retrospectives is another thing you can do to really accelerate your Scrum team's performance. Let's see. Some of the other things is, we have to track all kinds of metrics, and it really is not. We have 4. We have 4 measures we have to keep an eye on, but they're very, very simple to keep up with. You don't need any complex tools to do so. It's a matter, most of it's counting and some very simple math is really all you need.
Yes,
So,
I love how you just broke that right down to basic math. So Jim, we have a few seconds left in this session, and I wanted to ask you, what are your professional goals for the future in Kanban training and practice? And are there new areas or challenges you are excited to explore?
Continuing my professional Kanban trainer journey, working with the folks at prokanban.org to move that forward. Uh, I want to continue to expand Kanban not just at the team level, but at the portfolio level within organizations that I work in, so that not only are the teams being effective using Kanban, but now the environment is enabled for them because it's at a portfolio level as well, which will make the teams much more successful. I would like to continue to offer training classes because, as we talked about a little bit earlier, the light bulb moment, that's what drives me when I see people's light bulbs go off in the class, and you just know right then and there that they got it, and that geeks me out a lot. I am super excited about the new accelerating product value course from Pro Kanban. That's probably my favoriteest thing we got going on right now is a new course that's going to help product folks, product professionals, identify risk, learn how to manage risk and mitigate it a lot better. It's going to look at how to accelerate the product delivery, how to be accurate and reliable in your forecasting, and just so much cool stuff in that I'm super excited about that.
That's awesome. It sounds very amazing, and I probably need to pay more attention to what's going on with Procom on org. But I've been a bit busy on the speaking engagements kind of trip I've been on. Just came back off a cruise speaking for the PMI Clear Lake, Galveston, Texas chapter, and I'm just glad to be home for a minute. But I'm teaching a applying professional Kanban course this weekend actually, so my next availability will be July. So we have a few persons in our audience. I know we're past our time box, but if anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand and I'll bring you up on the stage. If not, Jim, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come and be a part of Marching Forward with Flow. You're our episode 4, and I'm sure that this is not going to be the end of our conversations. I wish you all the best in your journey with prokanban.org and also in your life as a trainer and an agilist and all the other good stuff that's going on for you. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.